maybe nerding out about different topics and things. So it's great to be here with you. Let's just jump right into it. To start, I always like to reinforce and remind people about what we're doing here at Tremont. And from our perspective, from the product development science perspective, our goal is really encapsulated in a really simple mantra. It's well-being made better. Our goal and our thought process with every product that we develop, as we review the literature, as we look at different ingredients, is how can we improve the quality of life now with the products that we're making. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we quantify that. So, in our field, we talk a lot about longevity and lifespan. But more recently, we've really focused on health span. Lifespan is the length of time in which you're alive, from the date of your birth, the date of your death. Now, health span is the amount of time in which you live when you're free from chronic diseases, like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, dementia, etc. These are diseases that typically come at a later stage in life and generally are a reflection of what happens in the aging process. Our goal is to expand and extend health span, help us live healthier for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, aging is a little bit inevitable. It happens. It's not something that you're ever going to stop. But there are some things that we can do to slow the progression of aging, to delay the onset of these chronic diseases, and that's a little bit about where our focus has been within the past couple of years. We focus a lot on metabolic health, making sure that we're processing our foods correctly, managing our blood sugar levels, getting to a healthy body weight. All of these factors are important to health. Daily physical exercise, having a sense of community, all of these are things that are really important for prolonging health span. There seems to be, though, an area where they converge, an area in the body, particularly in the cell, where we can look at and target specifically new product development that can delay the onset chronic diseases, that can help extend our health span, and that area is in the mitochondria. Now, just a quick refresher, the mitochondria is an organelle. It's inside your cell. It is what we call the powerhouse of the cell. This is where all of your energy in the form of ATP is being produced. It's present in nearly every cell in the body with the exception of red blood cells. And mitochondrial function is actually one of the parameters or hallmarks of aging. Really good, efficient mitochondrial function is really indicative of good metabolic health and just healthy living in general. Dysfunction in the mitochondria is associated with things like inflammaging or high levels of oxidative stress. And that's simply because if you think of ATP production, it's a series of donation, reception of electrons that go back and forth between a couple of different subunits in the mitochondrial membrane. Derek, where are you? I told Derek to flag me if we start getting overly nerdy. Thank you. All right, good. We're still good at this point. Got it. Perfect. There we go. So that process we hope is perfect. It's not always perfect. And depending on our lifestyle choices, like whether we exercise or we're sedentary, nutrition has a huge impact here. The types of foods that we eat really matter. I was listening to Jeff and Jen just earlier in the session before, and they made some great comments about the overconsumption of sugar, and what better place than where they have like Coca-Cola stores and M&M shops, like just ready to flood you with whatever you need, right? But nutrition plays a huge role, especially in this area in mitochondrial health, because as you process glucose and sugars, that's just putting a really heavy load on what's happening within your mitochondria. Another marker is senescent cells, and that only contributes to this inflammation or oxidative stress. The cells that are zombies, they don't divide the whole way, they're kind of just stuck, they're in limbo, they send out pro-inflammatory signals, help me, help me. So if we can tackle and address mitochondrial health, we're really creating an opportunity to expand our health span, extend our health span, if that's a word, and then live more optimally and perform better throughout life.
Yeah, so protecting our mitochondria, giving them what they need to function is going to be critical not just for our immediate health today, but for that long-term health, for longevity, for health span. And one of those main functions our mitochondria are doing is creating energy, as Tom said. So to give them what they need to create energy, that is what NAD does. So this new product that you've heard about a few times here so far, NAD, is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. You don't have to know the whole name, but NAD is what mitochondria require in order to produce energy. So you can think of NAD like a shuttle bus in your mitochondria. It's taking those electrons from one place in the cell and shuttling them over and dropping them at the electron transport chain. And the reason that's important is your mitochondria need those electrons to produce energy. But as we age, especially after the age of about 40, our NAD levels dramatically drop. So that shuttle bus that's running and shuttling electrons around is not running as frequently, and that results in less energy production in the mitochondria. And that's our whole energy source in our cells, this ATP. So if you have less NAD, less shuttle buses running, less energy produced, all this important cellular processes that keep our cells healthy and just running day to day start to be impaired. So these are things like DNA repair. Our DNA is constantly replicating and occasionally it'll get an error in there, and we have mechanisms that go in and fix those. I kind of think of these processes within the mitochondria and within our cells like a poorly run city, right? So if you have in your city, the trash collectors don't come around a whole lot, you start to get damaged, you start to get accumulation of trash in your streets. That's kind of what's happening in our cells. If those processes that require energy aren't functioning properly, you get accumulation of trash in your cells. This damaged DNA, damaged proteins, and things that really should be taken out with processes like autophagy and mitophagy that clear that waste. So maintaining cellular energy is really important, and NAD is what we need to do that. But NAD isn't just about energy. It's directly involved in a lot of those important processes. So DNA repair, it's a substrate for DNA repair enzymes. You may have heard of sirtuins. This is a class of enzymes that has been implicated in a lot of metabolic health and aging processes. So NAD is a substrate for those sirtuin enzymes. The sirtuins and also AMPK, which is activated by sirtuins, those are all highly involved in metabolic health. So processes like that regulate insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control are all interconnected through NAD, sirtuins, and AMPK. But one of the most interesting things I think about NAD is how it affects our circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is this 24-hour cycle that our body is on, right? It regulates when we sleep and wake. It regulates a lot of hormone release, gene expression. And if your circadian rhythm is out of whack, your metabolic health is out of whack. So it's really important for maintaining good metabolic health to have a circadian rhythm that's in sync. And so NAD helps regulate those genes that help bring our circadian rhythm into a more regular rhythm. So at Trinant, we are focused on metabolic health. Everything, all the products that we've created thus far, not all of them, but most of them, have some focus towards metabolic health. And we wanted to continue that theme with this new product. But what we really wanted to do here was go to the source, go to the cellular level, those mitochondria that we know are so important for healthy aging, longevity, and health span, and target those specifically with this new product. So Dr. Tom, myself, many other people within the company were involved in designing this new product, which we hope you guys try in the new samples that you've had and love. But what we did was include kind of 3 key things with this product. First, a NAD precursor, and we'll talk in a minute why we included a precursor versus just NAD itself. So we included nicotinamide riboside, or NR. That's a precursor to NAD. We made that NR as bioavailable as possible by including liposomal technology. So this is a technology that's going to help improve how well that gets absorbed and how well it can get absorbed into your cells. And then we included a really unique ingredient called ellagic acid. This is a patented form of ellagic acid that we included, and Tom will be telling you in a moment why this one's so cool. But I'm going to talk about NR first. So nicotinamide riboside is a building block. It gets absorbed into cells, and then it gets converted to NMN and then NAD. And we know from clinical studies that NR is very effective at raising NAD levels. But you might be thinking, well, why couldn't I just take NAD or maybe NMN? NAD itself is a really big molecule, and it is not easily absorbed from the intestine into the bloodstream, and it's not easily absorbed once it gets to your cells. It's also not incredibly stable, so it might get broken down before it even gets to your cells. So that's the main reason we don't use NAD. But you will see some other products out there on the market that use NMN, and that is a step closer to NAD in that process. But when we were thinking about which one of these 2 we wanted to include in the product, there were a few reasons that we decided NR was superior to NMN. One, NR has more clinical human studies than NMN for increasing NAD. So we believe that this is just stronger evidence that it's more effective. Second, it's more stable. So more of that NR is going to get to the cells, and it's once it enters the cell, it's very easily converted all the way to NAD. And then third, it's just more easily absorbed into the cells than NMN. So these 3 reasons are why we chose NR over NMN. And after we made that choice, we said, all right, we've got NR, it pretty easily can convert to NAD in the cells, but we want to make sure as much of it gets to the cells as possible, and then once it gets to the cells, it can get absorbed. So that's where we included this liposomal technology. So liposomes can be used for different ingredients. It doesn't have to just be NR. But what they do is they encapsulate the ingredient in this lipid sphere, and that protects the ingredient and protects it through digestion and helps more of it get down into your intestines. It helps it get absorbed because this lipid bilayer that's surrounding the NR is very similar to the cell membranes, so it easily interacts with our cells. So that helps it get absorbed from your intestine into your bloodstream, and then same thing, once it gets to your cells, the cell membranes kind of recognize it as, oh, this is the same as us, and so it helps it get absorbed. So combining the highly bioavailable NR that we know increases NAD levels with that liposome technology was a really important piece to make sure we optimized how much of this precursor gets to your cells so we can increase NAD as much as possible.
How is everybody feeling so far? We've thrown out a number of different little abbreviations, and an N, and an R, and an E. You'll all be quizzed, of course, at the very end. So practicing your mind. Nicotinamide, dinucleotide, I've got it. You'll kill it. Let's continue this theme, though, of bioavailability and also mitochondrial focus and target. Ellagic acid is a derivative of ellagitannins, and these are found primarily and probably most notably from pomegranates. Pomegranates are also found in some nuts and berries and things of that nature. Ellagic acid has some really fun, unique properties. It will activate sirtuins, something we just mentioned already, which and it also directly activates AMPK. You'll recall from our activate days of some of the plant polyphenols that are in activate will do the very same thing. So you can see how we're kind of starting to stack some ideas and some benefits together. And we know that activating sirtuins or activating AMPK can really have a positive effect on our metabolic health. Things like better glucose uptake, for example, better fat burning, we call it fat oxidation, but just in simpler terms, fat burning, right? And most importantly, a much better response and reduction in oxidative stress. This is really critical because we want to make sure as we keep oxidative stress at a minimum, we're protecting not just the integrity of our cell membranes, but the fidelity of DNA replication. Now, ellagic acid with certain gut microbes gets converted into another class of compounds called urolithins. And this is where things start to get really interesting. So we're really excited about some of these things I just mentioned. Again, glucose disposal, fat oxidation, reduction in oxidative stress. But now with urolithins, we're starting to get a really specific type of signaling, and specifically with a urolithin, a class of urolithins called urolithin A, and it's a regulation of what's called mitophagy. We've talked about autophagy before. Erin just mentioned autophagy is kind of this, it's not kind of, it's the process in which we can eliminate junk and waste in our cells, and mitophagy is the specific process by which mitochondria, dysfunctional mitochondria, it's eliminated, broken down and eliminated from the cell. There's a few different types of urolithins. I mentioned one, urolithin A. As you know, scientists are super creative, so we'll find one target compound and there's one that looks a lot like it, so we go A, B, C, D, like, couldn't think of a better system, but whatever, it works, right? So urolithins are actually produced from ellagic acid, and it's converted into these urolithins by specific gut microbes, and then mitophagy takes place. Now, what would be the benefit of getting rid of dysfunctional mitochondria in your cells? Well, a couple things have been shown in the literature that when you supplement with urolithin A in particular, like you see improved physical performance. What I mean by that, like you have more endurance, you actually have more muscle strength. You have much less oxidative stress within your cells. It supports a much more healthy inflammatory response. So these are things that I think over time become really critical if you want to preserve lean muscle mass, or if you want to improve physical performance. This is a great way to do that. Get rid of crappy, underperforming mitochondria and replace them with the good stuff. But why don't other people just use ellagic acid? There's companies that make a whole living just selling pomegranate juice. You may have heard of like Palm Wonderful, right? Drink this and it cures your cardiovascular disease. It doesn't actually say that, but you get what I mean, right? And the real challenge with ellagic acid is the fact that it's not really soluble, which makes it not very bioavailable. So we partnered with a group out of UT Austin, UT Texas, in Austin. Do I say that right? There's a few horns down here. I know there's a couple other A&M fans, but I won't. Okay, anyway. So we partnered with the group there, and they've been working with doing some really clever chemistry. And what they found is they can combine choline with ellagic acid, and it becomes soluble, 1,000 times more soluble. Very clever science, which makes it much more bioavailable, much more accessible to gut microbes in your digestive and intestinal tract to be converted into urolithins. Just ellagic acid alone has wonderful benefits, but you can see the solubility factor makes it a very potent delivery mechanism for ellagic acid. So on the one hand, we have nicotinamide riboside in the liposomal delivery. On the other hand, we have this really clever choline alligate, ellagic acid. Those three terms are synonymous in the form of an ionic bond. Quick refresher, how many of you seasoned your dinners last night with some salt? It's okay, but there's no judgment here. If you didn't like it and you put a little salt on your meal, it's okay, right? Yeah. I did. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that. Salt is sodium and chloride in an ionic bond, right? Choline and ellagic acid together is an ionic interaction. It dissolves in water, comes together, dissolves in water. It's a beautiful, simple, super clever, and by the way, nobody is using this. We are the first company to be taking this product to market. So, quick summary. I just did it, didn't I? I feel like I'm being redundant.
You did, but you know what? It's good to hear more than that.
Let's just repeat again. What makes NAD plus from Trinont unique? Liposomal delivery system of nicotinamide riboside is the number one differentiator. The second differentiator, the number 1A, because again, we're really creative. We don't just do 1, 2. It's 1A, because that's how important it is this unique patented form of ellagic acid that helps to deliver ellagic acid to the intestinal tract at 1,000 times higher rate. It is the very first product at Trinont that is targeting mitochondrial health. Woo! Specifically targeting mitochondrial health.
Yeah, and this I just put here to show you the diversity of benefits of ellagic acid. You might see some competitors out there. A lot of other NAD products use resveratrol. Do you guys remember hearing about resveratrol like 10 years ago? And resveratrol is an antioxidant. It has some benefits. But what scientists thought 10, 15 years ago was going to be this huge breakthrough in anti-aging with resveratrol really hasn't panned out, right? There hasn't been a lot of new science that's shown resveratrol has like really massive effects for human health. There were good studies in animals. In humans, it hasn't been as exciting as we thought it might be. But ellagic acid targets many more pathways. Those pathways we've been talking about, like AMPK, the urolithins, anti-inflammatory, the gut microbiome, AMPK, much more cellular pathways, which means it results in a wider diversity of health benefits compared to a lot of these other standard antioxidants you might find in other NAD products. So this is just highlighting how unique ellagic acid is, and as Tom said, we are first to market with this particular patented ingredient, especially in the MLM space.
We're tag teaming.
Tag team.
Sorry.
So, how does this fit into the Trinont portfolio? And Tom, you chime in as well. I see this as, it is a foundational product. This is really cellular care. So can be an underlying foundation for any of the other metabolic health products that Trinont offers. When we think about DHS, that is also foundational, I would say we know like 90% of Americans need metabolic health support, right? There is such a huge population that is not metabolically healthy, less than 10%. So DHS is still very foundational for 90% of people. Anybody that has any metabolic health concerns will still want to be on DHS. NAD can be added on to any of these other products as really like that layer underneath that's going to support the cells. And I think of it particularly for people age 35 and over, as your NAD levels start to decline, as you start to feel, man, I just don't have the same energy as I used to in my 20s. NAD is going to be a great product that's just going to amplify the effect of all of our other metabolic health support.
Woo!
Let me just add, I think it's a great compliment to the DHS system. I mean, they're taking and tackling health span almost in the same fashion, like making sure your carb intake is adequate and appropriate, right? Making sure that you're signaling in the right way. The nice thing with NAD Plus is you're getting really a healthy dose of mitochondrial support that helps not just with mitophagy, not just with maybe DNA repair or the ATP production. It really is a nice, and one of the first products we have that addresses chronobiology. Erin, if you weren't listening, she talked a little bit about like circadian rhythms. Well, NR helps to reset your circadian rhythm, your circadian clocks. Like if they're off, like they are this weekend, take the product because it will help you get a reset. And it's really a nice complement to DHS that comes, and they pair really well as a little 1-2 stack type of product.
Yep. And just as a little housekeeping, y'all can clap. If you go to Trinon's website right now, you will see in the banner that NAD is already up. You can't buy it yet, but if you click that Learn More, the product information page, PDF, is already there. So that has a summary of kind of everything that we've talked about here. And then on Monday, when we get back, I'm recording like a 10-minute training that will kind of condense all of this. And that will also go on YouTube and I think in the app as well. So all of these resources will be available as you start to share this out.
Okay, guys, you've been great. Thanks. Thank you very much. Go enjoy.
All right, so here's what's going to happen.